The following program is paid for by the friends and partners of Touching Lives.
And when Jesus Christ came to this planet, He gave everything He had, including His very life. And when Jesus drew His last breath, He left nothing on the table. He left nothing in the tank. He gave to us everything He had. How can we not give our everything to Him?
Teaching people everywhere who Jesus is and why they need Him. This is Touching Lives with James Merritt.
It's amazing how when you begin to try to see the way Jesus sees, you'll see things that nobody else will see. And you'll see things in a way that nobody else will see them. And it really is amazing that this story is in the Bible, because the woman that's talked about in this story does something that to the ordinary eye was so small, so insignificant, so inconsequential, so unimportant, nobody would have given it a second thought except Jesus. Nobody would have ever given that a second look except Jesus. But it's because Jesus talked about it that we're still talking about it today 2,000 years after it happened. And I want you to see three things in this story that's all related to you and me and our generosity. Number one, Jesus anticipates when we give. Jesus decides to His disciples, let's go down to the temple and watch people put money in the offering. Now, I'm sorry, it's got to be a slow day when you say, hey, we got nothing else better to do. Let's go down to the church and watch the offering. Man, you got to admit, you're really hard up for something to do that. Well, that's exactly what it is. They go down to the temple, and here's what happens. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put, and He watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts. Now, let me tell you what's going on. When you walked into the temple, there was a certain section down at the front of the temple where the offerings were received. Jesus, we're told, purposely took a front row seat. No backseat madness for Jesus today. He said, boys, I want to get a front row seat. I want to be down there where I can see exactly what everybody is giving. Now, this is so unique, because whenever Jesus was teaching or whenever Jesus was performing a miracle, normally everybody wanted a front row seat, right? I mean, everybody wanted that seat. This is the only time we're ever told Jesus wanted a front row seat. Now, the reason that's strange to me, I would understand if this was a concert or a football game or a play or a wrestling match, okay? I can understand that. I get that. It's an offering. It's church. And Jesus says, I want to be right on the front row. And the reason why I wanted to be on the front row, He wanted to see exactly what everybody was giving. Well, Jesus was very observant. He's anticipating what people were giving. He knew exactly how much everybody was putting in. And He was very well aware that these rich people were putting in large sums of money. Now, let me stop and make sure you understand something I'm not saying. Jesus was not condemning these rich people for giving a lot of money. He wasn't questioning their motive and why they were doing. It has nothing to do with that at all. God loves a cheerful giver, whether you're a rich person or a poor person. If you give and you give for the right reason, God loves a cheerful giver. So they're rich people. I know some. They've got a good heart. Some of the greatest charitable work being done in the world today is being done by rich people. The point that Mark is simply making is that the Lord anticipates what we give. He knows when we give. He knows when we don't give. He's marking down what we give, okay? But that is not the real point of the story. That's to set up the rest of the story. But just understand, Jesus anticipates when we give. But here's the second thing we learn. Jesus calculates what we give. He anticipates when we give. He knows it, whether you give something or give nothing. But He calculates what we give. Now, again, this story would have never made it in the Gospels. We would have never known about it had it stopped at verse 1, because there was nothing unusual about that. They took up the offering every day. People gave offerings all the time. So that in and of itself wasn't unusual. It's what happens next that made Jesus' eyes dilate, that made him lean over and really lean in, that made him kind of under his breath go, wow, did you see that? Here's what happens. But a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. I mean, it even sounds anticlimactic, right? I mean, you're going, okay, that's it? This is in the Bible? You mean you took up black ink and white paper to put this in the Bible? Because you're talking about an unlikely hero. Mark makes it plain. This woman was a 3-time loser. So what do you mean? Well, number 1, she's poor. Poor people were not very well respected in that day. Number 2, she was a widow. How do you know she was a widow? Because widows had a distinctive way of dressing to let you know that they were widows. So she wasn't even married, didn't have a husband. Number 3, third mark against her, sorry lady, she was a woman. And 2,000 years ago, you were considered a second-class citizen to a man if you were a woman. So here's a woman who's a 3-time loser. She's poor, she's a widow, and she's a woman. And yet, she makes the front page of Jesus' newspaper because Jesus sees something when he's watching her that nobody else saw with that supernatural spiritual vision. He sees her put in these 2 small copper coins. So you got all these rich people putting in all this money, and this widow comes by. She drops in 1/10 of 1 penny. And nobody gave her offering a second thought, but Jesus gave it a second look. And he's so impressed by what this woman has done, he calls all the disciples over to see what this woman has done. And he makes a statement that, I'm going to be honest, I'm sure when he said it, the disciples are going, you may be the Messiah, but you're not too good in math. Because here's what he said. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury. Now watch this. Than all the others. It's not just that Jesus said, well, she did put in a little bit more than that little boy, or she did put in a little bit more than that little girl. He said, did you see what that lady just did? She put in more than all the other money that everybody else put in together. Now, would never say anything disrespectful about Jesus, ever. But I'm an accounting major. I understand math and arithmetic and money, and I understand the bottom line is the bottom line. And I have to be the first one to tell you, if I had been there that day, I would have said to Jesus, where did you go to school? Can you tell me who your math teacher was? Can you tell me how you come to that conclusion? And Lord, with all respect, you're never going to do my taxes. I mean, you just said to me, you saw what she gave. She put in more than all the rich people to get put together. And what they didn't realize it at the time, but Jesus was teaching them such a great lesson about generosity. Here's what he was saying. The most generous givers do not necessarily or always give the biggest gifts. Now that's what we think. That's not what Jesus thought. The most generous givers do not necessarily always give the largest gifts. Simply put, generosity is not always measured by what you give. There's a difference between giving the greatest amount and being the most generous giver. $1 million may be a dream gift, and we've gotten $1 million gift here before. And that may be a great gift, but it may or may not make you a dream giver. 1/10 of a penny may make you a dream giver. Because you talk about generosity. Now listen to what we're learning here. You don't get a pass if you're not rich. You don't get a pass if you don't have nearly as much money as the next person. Let's just imagine right now that you drive a truck, or you dig ditches, or you sell insurance, and you make not that much. And let's just imagine right now, you're sitting next to somebody that drove a brand new Mercedes onto this church property today. If you sit there and say, well, There's just no way I could ever be as generous as that person is. Jesus would say, you don't understand what generosity is all about. Because here's what this poor widow teaches us. You don't have to be rich to be generous. You don't have to have a lot to give. And you don't have to have a lot to give a lot. Now, that's exactly what we're learning here. See, here's why. Now, this is where it's going to upset a lot of apple carts. Jesus doesn't measure what people give the way we measure what people give. Jesus doesn't measure generosity the way we measure generosity. We look at the portion of what people give. Jesus looks at the proportion of what people give. We look at how much people put on the table. Jesus looks at how much is left in your pocket. We look at what people put in. Jesus looks at what is left over. And I want to tell you one reason why I'm looking forward to heaven. I really, really am. Not today, but I'm really looking forward to heaven. Well, today, if he wants me to come, I'm ready, but I'd like to stay a while. Just one national championship. That's all I want. We're going to get to heaven, and we're going to find that some of the most generous people who ever walked this planet were some of the poorest people we ever knew. Because God doesn't measure it the way we measure it. And God doesn't look at it the way we look at it. Jesus is not impressed with how great your gift is. He's impressed with how generous your gift is. Go back to that day in the temple. Okay, what happened? When those rich people gave all that money, everybody applauded. But only one person applauded when the widow gave that tenth of a penny. But that's the only applause that mattered. And that's the reason why we're talking about that story right now. See, Jesus anticipates when we give. Jesus calculates what we give, not by how much we put on the table, but how much we leave in our pocket. Not how much the gift was worth, but how much the gift really cost. Bill Gates could give $1 million to this church. You may give $100 to this church. But your gift may be worth more than his gift. You may be more generous than that billionaire. See, Jesus calculates what we give. He anticipates when we give. If Jesus had been given out a grade for generosity, she's the only one that would have made an A+. But you know why? Because we haven't got to the real point of the story. We have not even hit the real bottom line. We've not hit the real bullseye of what this story is all about. Because not only does Jesus anticipate when we give, not only does Jesus calculate what we give, watch this, Jesus evaluates why we give. Now this is where the story really gets good. This poor little widow becomes the hero of this story. She didn't even know she was writing. And Jesus says, now the disciples are going, I can't believe what you're saying here. This is just not adding up. Literally and figuratively, this is just not adding up. And Jesus says, okay, guys, let me tell you why I'm so enamored with this woman. Let me tell you why I'll never forget this woman. Let me tell you why 2,000 years from now, James Merritt will still be talking about this woman. Listen to this. They, that is all these other people, they all gave out of their wealth, but she out of her poverty. Put in everything, all she had to live on. Jesus goes out of his way, and Mark goes out of his way in recounting the story to remind us just how poor this woman is. She's called poor. Then we're told she gave out of her poverty. There are two totally different Greek words. The word for poor describes someone who's totally destitute. So she was a beggar. Most likely she was homeless. Today she would have been on public assistance, government help. The second word for poverty means basically having nothing. So in other words, when you really read the story, this is what most people miss. What impressed Jesus so much was not the money that she gave. Because look, Jesus is not stupid. He knows a tenth of a penny is not a lot of money. He knows that. He's not dumb. But Lord, you know it's not a lot of money, and yet you said she gave more than everything. Where do you come up with that? Because Jesus said she put in everything, all she had to live on. Now, here's what you're going to understand. That little phrase, to live on, comes from one word in the Greek language. It's the word bios. We were taught something in high school. What were we taught in high school? Biology. That's where we get the word biology. Bios is life. Logos is word. Biology is the word of life, studying about life. That's what biology is. Jesus said, it wasn't just her money, guys, that she gave. She was giving herself. She was not just giving all that she had, she was giving all that she was. And the reason why this woman could give all of her money to God was because she'd already given all of her life to God. Because see, we read this story and here's what we think. Man, it must have been hard for that woman to give both of these. I mean, she could have at least kept one of the coins. I mean, the woman's got to eat something. Boy, I can't believe how hard it was for her to give all that she had, how hard it was for her to give those 2 mice. No, it wasn't hard. Actually, that was the easy part. The hard part was giving God all of her heart. And what really impressed Jesus was not what she gave, it's why she gave it. It wasn't the amount. Jesus, again, he's not dumb. Shoot, that's nothing. It's not the amount, but look at her attitude. Because keep in mind, she's not going to get a tax deduction. It's not going to be written off. She didn't do it out of show. She didn't even know anybody was looking when she gave that offer. Matter of fact, she probably would have been embarrassed to know that somebody was. And she sure didn't give it flippantly. You know, she carefully thought out what she was going to do. But the reason she did this is she was making a statement, a clear statement to God. Actions speak louder than words, and did her actions ever speak loudly and ever speak clearly? Because unbeknownst to everybody else, when that woman walked over to that treasury and took those 2 little mites at 1/10 of a cent and dropped it in there, she was making a statement, not to you, not to me. She was making a statement to him. And here's what she was saying. God, I look to you to provide my needs. God, I love you more than I love my money. And God, I live for you and you alone. See, here's what a lot of people don't understand. And I've learned this. I've been saying it for 4 decades, and people still don't believe me. You know, there's sometimes it's real frustrating as a preacher. You say things and you go, now they think I'm lying. And I'm not lying, but you're convinced I'm lying. So, for example, when I say, and I do say, look, I don't want your money. I know some of you, let's be honest, you may even like me. You say, you're lying. That's a lie. You don't want my money, why are you passing the basket? Yeah, you want my money. No, I don't want your money. And it really blows them away. God doesn't want your money. You're kidding me. Well, then why does God say take up an offering if God doesn't want my money? Well, first of all, not your money. It's his money. He can take your money from you anytime he wants you. He can take you from your money anytime he wants to. It's not your money. Okay? Forget the U-Haul behind the hearse. It's not going to do you any good. Not your money. But here's what people don't get. God doesn't want your money. He wants your heart. I don't want your money. I want your heart. Can I be honest? Can I say something? And I hate to say it in a negative way. If your heart really isn't in this church, go find a church where your heart can be. I don't mean that to be ugly or unkind. But the only people I really want coming to our church, their heart is in the church. That's who I want. And see, Jesus cares not about what you give. Why do you give it? Are you giving it for a tax deduction? Are you giving it as a write-off? Are you giving it out of guilt because you feel bad if you don't give? Do you know what Jesus would say? Keep your money. I want you to give me what you give me because you have given me your heart. Can I share with you the greatest reason that my prayer for you today is that you'll walk out that door and you'll say, oh God, would you make me a generous person? Because we serve a generous God. A God who is so generous, who looked at you, he looked at me. He said, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to send my son to die for you. And that son said, and I'm going to die on a cross for you, even though you don't deserve it. And furthermore, I'm not going to charge you a dime. I'm not going to charge you interest. You don't have to make any payments. This is not an installment. I'm paying the whole sin debt you've incurred off, past, present, and future. And oh, by the way, I'm going to throw in eternal life absolutely free. And you don't want to give to a God like that? That's why. Because we serve such a generous God. So I'm going to wrap all this up. You've got one life to live. I've got one life to live. I want you to listen. You're going to live it one of two ways. You're either going to live your life as a generous person, or you're going to live your life as a greedy person. You will either live your life selflessly, or you will live your life selfishly. You will either live your life holding everything you own with an open hand, or you're going to live your life with everything you own in a clenched fist. On September the 3rd, 1939, the Nazis invaded Bielsko, Poland. There was a 15-year-old girl, her name was Gerda Weissman, and her family. They survived in the Jewish ghetto until June 1942. That's when Gerda was taken from her mother, who was sent to a death camp, while Gerda would spend 3 years in a Nazi concentration camp. She was one of the few survivors. By the time she was liberated by American troops in 1945, she was 21 years old. She weighed 65 pounds. Good news, little romantic ending, the soldier that rescued her married her. So it's a sweet story, but that's not the best part of the story. If you go to Boston, they have a Holocaust memorial, and there are 6 glass towers representing the 6 extermination camps where 6 million Jews were killed. 5 of those stories tell the story of the unbelievable, 5 of those towers tell the story of this unbelievable cruelty and this terrible torture that these Jewish people endured. But the 6th tower is a testimony to generosity that happened right in the middle of an extermination camp. Gerda is the one who tells the story. It's a short story. It's entitled One Raspberry, and this is the story you'll read on that memorial. Ilsa, a childhood friend of mine, once found a raspberry in the camp and carried it in her pocket all day to present to me that night on a leaf. Imagine a world in which your entire possession is one raspberry and you give it to your friend. Imagine a world where your entire possession is one raspberry and you give it to your friend. Imagine a God who has one son, and he gives him for us. Just imagine that. The real measure of your heart is bound up in whether or not you have a heart that wants to get or a heart that wants to give. The real measure of the value of a gift is not how much it's worth on the table, but how much is left in your pocket. That's true whether it's $2 million, 2 copper coins, or 1 raspberry. And when Jesus Christ came to this planet, he gave everything he had, including his very life. And when Jesus drew his last breath, he left nothing on the table He left nothing in the tank. He gave to us everything He had. How can we not give our everything to Him?
To watch an extended version of today's teaching message with Dr. James Merritt, go to touchinglives.org.
Years ago, there was a great tennis player named Andre Agassi, and he did these commercials for a camera company. They had the line, "Image is everything." My generation bought into that. Our generation still buys into that. It's image that counts. I beg to differ. Reputation is what other people think you are. Character is what you and God know that you are. Your character is far more important than your reputation. Your character is far more important than any image that you portray. That's why I've written this book, Character Still Counts, because it does. As a matter of fact, it counts more than anything else in life. One of these days, you'll be dead, I'll be dead, we will be gone, and our reputation really won't matter. But the only true legacy that we'll leave behind is our character. So I want to invite you to buy a copy of this book today. Go to touchinglives.org and get your copy. And don't just read it. Use it to invest your life into the lives of those that you love, the people that mean the most to you. And live every day with this message that people can see, hear, touch, and feel. Yes, my character still counts.
Touching Lives, teaching people everywhere who Jesus is and why they need Him. This program is sponsored by Touching Lives Ministries and is made possible by the grace of God and your faithful prayers and gifts.